Halo as a video game franchise is one of the most influential and successful games of all time, basically paving the way for a new way of thinking when creating first-person shooters like Combat Evolved, which was, by the way, the first ever game in 2001 to host an actual storyline when playing through it. Other games out at the time just didn't even compare, with games like Doom being, yes, a run and gun type of game, and it was really cool and fun, but Halo was just the first game to really make you feel immersed in its story and gameplay, give you a reason to care and want to know what happens next, and just appreciate the characters and the story in general. Back then it was very much like an interactive movie, and from that point on it grew and grew into something that Bungie and Microsoft would have never ever imagined. From the good old days of playing Halo Combat Evolved on co-op, to then having an online platform on Halo 2, it really did kickstart the industry of gaming, and many of the biggest YouTubers, influencers, artists, athletes will all tell you their memories on Halo's multiplayer from back in the day. Halo really was the start of gaming. After 5 very successful games and a boatload of books, novels, countless TV shows and series, Halo was its own universe and was at the very top of its game. But then in 2010, Bungie decided to leave, handing the reins and a boatload of expectation over to a new studio developing Halo, 343 Industries. The fanbase waited anxiously to see what 343 would pull out the bag, no one really knowing what would happen to Halo, what direction 343 would take it, and how it would compare to the gaming giant at the time, Bungie. And on November the 6th, 2012, just 2 years after Bungie had left, 343 shown off their new title. For me, Halo 4 was a very mixed bag. I actually quite liked the direction 343 went with the story in Halo 4, because in the first 3 main Halo games the Chief's personality was very regimented, and obviously he didn't speak much and would come out with some badass one-liners every now and then.
Tell that to the Covenant.
This was because Bungie wanted the Master Chief to be us, the player, a partially silent protagonist that only really speaks and voices what we're thinking at the time to expand on the story. But 343 decided to come away from that, and in the last 3 games have actually made the Chief his own character, rather than us, the player, just being Chief. We're now playing as the Chief as an actual character, going through the story as him through his eyes, if that makes sense. It made sense in my head anyway. But Halo 4 took that emotion and we learnt more about the Chief, what he was about, his relationship with the crew members on the Infinity, Cortana and also Dr. Halsey. He did have some mixed opinions at the time, but overall I really liked it, and I'm glad they still went in that direction with Infinite as well. But man, the way that Halo 4 looked. When I first played through that game, I actually wondered if the opening cutscene was a film. It looked absolutely stunning, and it was nothing like we'd ever seen before at the time. And to get that sort of performance on an Xbox 360 is honestly commendable, and I don't know how 343 did it. I just remember when I first booted up that game and thought to myself,
hold up, wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Comparing it to the likes of Black Ops 2 at the time that was striving, but it was night and day difference of how different those games looked. The multiplayer on the other hand was a bit of a different story, trying to keep up with and replicate popular games at the time like Black Ops 2, which was an obvious comparison when it first came out, with things like sprint being added, actual class setups in the multiplayer, and just a very different feeling multiplayer. I would go as far as categorizing it as one of my least favourite multiplayer experiences in the franchise, which to some may be controversial, but to me, other games just do a way better job with it. But what was next for Halo after this? After leaving a very split fanbase with the multiplayer and some controversial points in the campaign, some going back to the likes of Halo 3 for multiplayer, and others sticking out through Halo 4's life cycle, what direction were 343 going to go in? Well, this is where Halo 5 came in, and after the very first tease for the game dropped, it looked absolutely epic, with the Chief in a poncho and a huge Guardian just coming out of nowhere. It got the whole community hyped, and with Cortana essentially dying in Halo 4, it left the whole community with a bit of an element of mystery, like what's going to happen in Halo 5? How will they take the story forward without Cortana? And then in a teaser, when the Chief pulls out Cortana's old chip, I will not forget the day that I watched that trailer. When the Guardian blew the poncho off, we could see the Chief's new armor, the cracked visor, and it was just so hype at the time. I really do remember getting excited for Halo, because it looked so good, and we were like, what is this Guardian thing? What is this thing coming out of the sand that makes everything look so epic? And yeah, it was very exciting time. Fast forwarding a couple of months, they implemented a character which not many people are too familiar with unless you were a hardcore Halo fan, called Spartan Locke, essentially labelling him within the marketing as a Spartan killer, with Chief lying against a statue with a pistol pointed towards his head. Then all of a sudden the roles just flip. with another commercial showing the Chief pointing a pistol at Locke's face, entailing that these two are at each other's throats for the majority of the game, but a similar question was going through the community, and that was the mystery of the marketing. The reality was a little bit different, but again, the marketing did get everyone really hyped. This game could and probably should have been way much more. Sounds very similar to Halo Infinite, but sometimes reality's a bit of a bitch, and we got this.
Weapons free. Contact.
Halo 5 was criticised from a campaign perspective as being very lackluster and just not feeling like Halo. The fact that we only played the Chief for 3 missions throughout the entire campaign and Spartan Locke for the overall majority, in my opinion, was just a red flag from the get-go. Not to mention the Michael Bay cutscenes, awful choreography in the fight scenes. Don't even get me started on the Chief and Locke fight scene. I'm going to compare the Chief and the Locke fight scenes from Halo 5 and the Atriox and the Chief fight scene from Halo Infinite. They're next to each other right now. Look at the difference in the movement and the way that it looks. You can definitely tell that the Atriox and the Chief fight scene was just an all-out brawl. They really wanted to hurt each other and just go at each other's throats. Whereas the Locke and the Chief fight scene just doesn't quite hit the same. I am so glad that 343 had learned from this Halo 5 cutscene. And then out of nowhere, we're hit with the absolute bombshell. Cortana's back. This was a really confusing time for me. And just generally, it was a really confusing time for the Halo fans in general until later on in the game we know that she was now within the Forerunner domain, which is essentially the fountain of youth for AIs. We then go on to learn that she's this overpowered megamaniac that just wants humanity's AIs to take over the universe. It was a lot for me to take in at the start. Overall, the campaign just was not one of my favourites. Even the fact that it doesn't even have couch co-op, bearing in mind that this was the first Halo game to not have this feature since combat evolved in Halo 1. And it didn't go down too well with the player base, I can tell you that.
First strike, there is no split screen multiplayer at all. One of the core tenets of the Halo franchise now completely ripped out with no warning, gone, removed, in a blatant effort to force you to buy 2 copies of the game and a second Xbox One. Something that people had no problem doing with, mind you, for Halo 1 and Halo 2 after playing split screen with friends. But here, Microsoft and 343 Studios said, "Fuck your friend, give me money!"
The story overall was very underwhelming and it did not live up to the marketing hype. I don't know what changed from the marketing to the full game, but they seem like very, very different games. I don't know if something changed last minute or if a direction from Microsoft or some of the higher ups from 343 had changed last minute. I don't really know, but the marketing didn't really suit or fit what was going on in the actual campaign. Like, it could have been so much more, and I think Spartan Locke was done extremely dirty in this game. I mean, we played as him for the majority of the game, which one, already put a sour taste in people's mouths about him because we want to play as the Chief, you know? We don't want to play as Spartan Locke. We don't, for one, know who the hell he is, and 2, when we're forced to play as him when we want to play as the Chief, it's going to make us not like this character. And 2, he's hunting down our boy, you know? We don't want the Chief to be hunted down. We don't want the Chief to be at gunpoint when he's at his most vulnerable state. We love the Chief. We've been at the Chief at the very start. So that was one of the mysteries, but also one of the things like, who's this guy, you know? If I told you that in Halo 5 story, it was initially supposed to be about an only special agent who was Spartan Locke, known for assassinating high-value targets, who turned into a Spartan 4 to try and hunt down the infamous Master Chief because he had gone rogue. We don't know why he'd gone rogue, but maybe it could have been because he found Cortana, similar to the story already, and Spartan Locke was sent by the UNSC to try and hunt down the rogue Master Chief and, if needed, assassinate him. However, later on in the campaign, when they finally do meet during potentially their awful fight scene, that's when Locke understands what's going on, and that's where they potentially start to work together. Or maybe even the same things happened after that fight scene, but there was just a better fight scene. Maybe at this point, this is when the Chief could potentially threaten Locke and put him at gunpoint, and then this is where the marketing does kick in. Or that they meet twice, spend the rest of the campaign chasing the Chief, and have an underwhelming fight that you can't actually do anything during. Which one would you prefer? But Halo 5 actually wasn't all bad, and I know I'm going to be slated for this, but I actually didn't mind the multiplayer a whole lot.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit?
Now, this will be controversial, and I can understand why, but Halo 5 and 343 tried something new. They wanted to try and evolve the Halo franchise and make it more strategic, tactical game that involves a lot more skill to master, movement-wise. Yes, there were some balancing issues with weapons and vehicles, the pistol was very overpowered, and the Wasp was just bollocks. Not to mention the rec packs, which were just absolutely horrendous. But we won't make that the topic of this video because we'll just go down a rabbit hole. Oh, and not to mention the huge lack of content at launch, like Halo Infinite, so we can't really moan there. Warzone being very underwhelming after the first week, and it's just generally not appealing to the hardcore Halo community who preferred to play the broken MCC rather than Halo 5. But as much as I can see why people didn't like the multiplayer because it was a massive difference compared to Halo 4 and the games previous, I commend 343 for trying to change it up at the time, but come on, classic Halo will never be beaten, and we've seen this with Halo Infinite's multiplayer. It's gone back to its roots and it feels amazing, and the community, by and large, love it, despite some of the very apparent issues with microtransactions and leveling, etc. But then there's Forge, which was our most advanced version of Forge that we've ever had. I've never played Forge too much in Halo 5, I'll be honest, but I do know that it was delayed from the game's launch to ensure it had all of these features, it was polished completely, and that 343's ambition of Forge was taken to another level. Halo Infinite's Forge is apparently supposed to be a massive step up from even Halo 5, which maybe features things like AI scripting to an extent which would be so sick. So rather than having someone in Duck Hunt be the person with the sniper, you have an AI doing it. That would be so cool. But comparing it to Halo Infinite, I can 100% see why people didn't really like Halo 5. From the very linear level design to the very far from normal feeling Halo gameplay, Halo 5 lacked the DNA that fans just loved. Although it was fun to get into at first, it just didn't feel the same. Whereas Halo Infinite, it holds the DNA from previous Halo games that everybody loved, whilst also adding in those up-to-date features that we love to see in other games, such as the likes of Sprint. Not many people do like it in Halo, but Halo Infinite does it right. Halo 5 didn't do it right. But it's very interesting to go back to Halo 5 and look at what it's like in 2022. I jumped back into the multiplayer the other day and I was really enjoying myself. I mean, if that was the only game I was playing for 6 years, then I can understand that it would be extremely irritating and I would probably come to hate it myself. But for something to just jump on for a few games here and there, from a multiplayer perspective, has that typical feeling that when you jump onto the previous game in a franchise or a universe like Call of Duty, which is known for, I mean, even players that are bored of Halo Infinite right now because there's no progression system, no armor ranking up, and there's only really a battle pass you can play and lack of game modes as well, people are jumping back onto Halo 5 and are enjoying it quite a lot. If you haven't already and you're feeling the fatigue of Halo Infinite's multiplayer, then I do urge you to go back and try Halo 5. See how it compares and do see what you think. You never know, your opinion may have changed. Or if not, you can play MCC, either one works fine. Overall, Halo Infinite is in a weird spot right now with very limited things to do, and to be honest, I've got very little motivation to play it. Until we get the roadmap, which has been delayed for the foreseeable future, we won't know what's going on with the future of Halo. So I'm trying to fulfill my Halo multiplayer needs in every way possible, whether that's MCC or Halo 5. Let me know your thoughts on this down below. But guys, what do you think of Halo 5? Was it a sleeper game? Was it better than we thought? Or do you just straight up hate it? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, guys, but be sure to do like the video if you did enjoy this video and subscribe if you are brand new. I've tried something a bit different today and I hope that it has come off well, but yeah, time will tell. But guys, have a great rest of your day, take care, and speak to you soon.